I'm Shivani. मैं वुमैनिटी फाउंडेशन है उसके साथ नहीं काफ़ी सारे पैनल्स थे जेंडर के बारे में बात करेंगे इसलिए पर एक दिन में कॉन्सेंट्रेट हो गया ना हम लोग इंडिया में बेसिकली हमारा एक प्रोग्राम है हम काफ़ी जगह लाभकारी और इंडिया में हमारा एक प्रोग्राम है जिसका नाम है लैंड फॉर वुमेन हाँ ये हमारे 2021 में and basic pieces is people who are working on the land वो related party जो भी हैं उनके होने चाहिए and not somebody else डेटा है कि stabilization of agriculture हो रहा है stabilization of forest business हो रहा है फिर forest rights का भी नहीं तो हम वो equation change करने and laws are so friendly.
If yes is our partner, हाँ कम कर देगा ना थोड़ा एसी का कम करने का बोलो ना
सर मैं बोल के आया काउंटर पर
देख मत बैठिए चलिए
रंजन भी आने वाले
हाँ फॉर्मेट मानस इज मॉडरेटिंग
आपने क्वेश्चंस भेजे थे
हाँ
थोड़ा होमवर्क किया
जीजू से मेरे ये स्टाफ से ये is the planning board member in Kerala. He's one of the management he's a professor. He's a extension legislation He was also lead in the administration schools and it was high school. So the option okay that is that because extremely
a lot of like that. No, she is free on this. She is quite
and also the implementation अभी मैं पढ़ रही थी 2 दिन पहले रिपोर्ट में आया था कि अभी यूपी इलेक्शन आने वाले हैं
Study
So
agent.
now
नहीं क्लास में
government
बता
policy is trying to
फर्स्ट क्लास पढ़ता है
change that law. वहाँ पे women, girls don't get equal rights in agriculture. Although it says 6, it's all wrong. Why special exclusion? They are trying to correct that. Because अभी next election करेंगे, चलो इस बहाने at least कुछ noise तो नहीं.
हमारे समझ से तुम्हारे
Agriculture land अगर property है और non-agriculture land है तो उसमें allowed है. क्योंकि वो स्टेट सब्जेक्ट है, एक स्पेशल लॉ है जो तो उसमें इक्वल राइट्स नहीं है. अभी मैंने उस दिन
Tenants का वो बड़े हाल होता नहीं है कभी से दिन
in agriculture.
ये तो अच्छी अच्छी बड़ी छोटी
बहुत ज़्यादा. आप लोग तो बहुत ज़्यादा काम करते हैं.
क्या बात है
तो मतलब जैसे इक्वल अगर भाई को 2 हिस्सा मिलेगा होने पे ज़्यादा कुछ नहीं कि उनका रिलीजियस अपने यहाँ जो लैंड राइट्स को रिप्रेजेंट है और एनीबडी इज गवर्न बाय द रिलीजियस नॉट बाय द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. तो अपने जैसे हिंदू सक्सेशन ऐसे मुस्लिम Just trying to that is the personal
I'm coming up in some minutes.
वो तो यूनिफॉर्म कोड ऑफ कंडक्ट रहता है. हम लोग we are not big enough to actually get it right. That would be easy. We just जो हो सकता है वो करना है और आजकल के ज़माने में उससे पहले तो there are so many without basically धीरे धीरे थोड़ा थोड़ा हिस्साने पड़ता है, एकदम से नहीं उखाड़ जाता है. It's a very tough. वो जो donations to the charity to the religious
you are basically passing on some rights that are
coordinated office. Let's start. Yeah, let's start.
You can all come then.
Is there any order in which you want to
Wherever you sit, but there is an order to ask you questions.
Thank you.
I think I had order to study you for
Chale. Next.
So do you have the validations for
It's not good. You can take this. It will be good.
Oh, I know that.
So we have to use this.
Chal raha hai.
Only for that. They are not working.
this is for the
Audience.
Audience.
The audience we are going to have वो भी कर सकते हैं. लेकिन just
Making
sit in
a
the
round table बना देते हैं.
and this is for the
will not disturb your system.
चलो 7 लोग तो हैं और या 5 है.
ज़्यादा है आपसे.
Just about.
Equal numbers.
चलो या 40% हो.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session on empowering tenants, transforming agriculture, lessons from state reforms. So we have eminent panelists with us to educate us and to inform us about the subject so that we get some ideas of what really are the issues and what more can be done. But to start the thing, let me say something as the context that we really need to examine the central paradox in Indian agriculture. And the paradox is that today Indian food system is sustained by 86%, I think, smallholders. And it is also a fact that around 40% of the cultivators are tenant farmers. And all are smallholders, landless or smallholders. So people who are sustaining our food systems, they are invisible. Tenant farmers means they are invisible to the system. They are institutionally invisible and economically vulnerable. So that is the condition, and they are sustaining our food system. So how vulnerable our food system is and what will it will lead to, you can easily understand. And NSO data say that it is only 17 or 18% of the land today is cultivated by sharecroppers or tenant farmers. It is not true. Many other reports have said. NGOs say that it is 40%, and even recently, you must be knowing, in Telangana, they did a study. It said 35%. So nowhere it is less than 35%, and we work in Bihar. There it is 80%. In Begusarai district, it is 80% plus. So that is the situation. That people who really are tilling the fields, they are not known to be the owners. Anyway, they are not the owners, and they are not able to access crop loans, any subsidies, input subsidy, insurance, even when there is a crop damage, the compensation. So all these benefits they are not able to access. So many reforms have taken place. Niti Aayog, I think first time they sent this model act, because agriculture is state subject, they cannot implement, they only can advise. So the advisory had gone in, I think, 2016, the model act to recognize tenant farmers, and they broadly, I think the suggestions were that it should be made easy and low cost for registration of leads. Second, it should be both, interest of both should be seen, so that it should be, on the one hand, it should be meaningful security should be provided to tenant farmers, like multiple year leasing and all that. At the same time, it should be attractive for landowners. Third, it should help people access loans, access subsidies, access MSP, everything. And fourth, digital grievance redressal systems. These are, I think, that there are many, I think 11 or 12 points were there in the model, but broadly those were around this. But however, just add, the fact today is that even though after the Model Act was said, only 4 or 5 states acted upon it, rest came up with executive orders to do something on it, but the fact on the ground still remains that most of the lease is informal. Leasing is largely informal, even in the state Kerala, which is known to have done the best, known to have put the best effort in this regard. So we'll explore all that. So I would, the structure will be that I would invite the speakers one by one in, so that we get some basic information first and then get deeper into this. So I would like to first, among us, Deepika is there, who is doing PhD in IIM Ahmedabad. So I would like to first invite her to tell us about the scenario in India, and really if we want to work on these issues, what really should be the metrics for government to track and make continuous progress. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Deepika Yadav. I'm a PhD student at IIM Ahmedabad, and my PhD thesis on land tenancy and its relationship with sustainable agriculture. And my study is mostly based on Punjab tenant farmers. So it's a very right question to begin this session with. The metrics which are presently there. So I will begin by highlighting the lack of data around this topic. So in India, NSS, so basically there is this one data set, situation assessment of household, rural household, which is there, which collects data on land tenancy in India. And this data also is collected after every 4 to 5 years. And according to this data, we see that basically who has registered their leases, only their data is reflected in this particular data set. So it's basically a very gross underrepresentation of what the reality is, because as Mr. Manas has pointed out, most of the land tenancy contracts in India, they are oral and informal. So you do not register it with any of the state organizations. And if we look at the data itself, what we see is that the percentage of tenant households, they have been increasing over time. If we look at the data between 2002 and 2019, we see that the percentage of tenant households, they have increased by 74%. And the leased in area, that has also doubled during this time period. And what is most important to look at in this scenario is the nature of the land contracts. So fixed rent land contracts, they have been rising. And why is it important to look at these contracts is that in these contracts, land is to be paid upfront to the landowner, or in some areas it is paid after the harvest season. But what this does is that it limits the owner farmer's role in the agricultural related decision making, and the entire risk of production, which is related to, say, weather uncertainties or the price fluctuations which are there, or any kind of natural calamity like we saw floods in Punjab. All those risks are then transferred to the tenant farmers, and he then becomes very production centric because he has to recover his cost. And especially in the context of Punjab, the land rent is also rising, and it is like the biggest component of the production cost. So basically, and additionally, another aspect of these land contracts being oral and informal is that these then limit tenant farmers access to institutional credit, all the different kinds of subsidies that are there, be it MSP, be it fertilizer subsidy, be it insurance, and any other state support. So basically what is happening right now is the person who's actually tilling the land, who's actually taking the risk, agricultural risk, he is not getting any state support. And the matrix is also such that it is not taking into account the majority of the tenant farmers. So the real tenant farmers are not being reflected in the current databases of the government. So even if we want to look at any impact of any of these reforms, these land reforms, it's basically ineffective as of now. So coming to what kind of matrix there should be, I think a lot of land records digitalization is happening right now. So if we can integrate the tenant information within these databases, I think that's going to be very helpful. And to begin with, I think it is very important to first of all identify and acknowledge the real tenants who are there. So at the village level, I think it can be done by a gram sevak. He can actually identify who's the person who's cultivating the land, and if that can be assimilated in the land records, so then probably we can integrate the different government schemes which are there with these records and give the benefits of the schemes to the person who's actually cultivating the land and not just who's the owner of the land, who might be a urban migrant in many of the cases, who might be a government official in many of the cases. So yeah, to begin with, these are my thoughts, and I'll come back with more inputs.
Thank you for providing us with clarity on these metrics and the lack of it, which is actually not helping us to really know the exact status of this tenant farmers. So the major issue is this, that the risk is on somebody and somebody else is getting. The full risk is on tenant farmers, and with change in climate, actually the risks are much more. If you know about this, let me give you some data. In 2022, on 82% of the days in a year, we had extreme activities like thunderstorm, heat storm, and all that, rains. And it increased to 83% in 23, it increased to 84% in 24. So that is the trend. 25 data anyway, it will come only in 26 beginning. So if at this rate, number of extreme activities are increasing, what must be happening to the agriculture? And on top of that, when they don't get the compensation for any damage and they take all the risks, how viable it is? And their numbers are increasing. The real owners are moving out of the village and there. So it is not just sustainable what is going on. Now I would like to get back to Professor Jiju, who was there in the planning board of Kerala, and Kerala, as I said, has taken significant steps to really recognize the rights of tenant farmers. So let us listen from him what institutional design made Kerala's approach work and what still are the challenges, and from your experience, what will you advise other states who want to deal with this issue?
So in fact, we approach tenancy with some apprehension. Since we have long back abolished it, we do not use that term as instead we try to use the term lease the farming kind of lease the farming. We don't use that tenancy or tenant farming in our state. In fact, this has been a major issue, particularly as a second generation issue of agricultural transformation in the state. Maybe, as people say, it could be because there has been a lot of marginalization and fragmentation. And fragmentation of land has urged us to get on to new methods of aggregation of land, which has not happened as a second generation issue. And that has actually impacted growth of agriculture in the state as well. But the state has been trying to have other means of livelihood through migration, higher education, etc., etc. And farming has become a marginal activity as of now. And as it happens in any other part of the country, the contribution of agriculture to the total GDP has also been going down. But the issue is, how do you overcome this problem of fragmentation? And the only way out, particularly for those who are engaged in farming as a livelihood, is to lease land or lease land farming. And there are two institutional mechanisms we have tried out. And first is Kudumbashri. Kudumbashri is a women collective network which has one of its kind, for the first of its kind, I would say, in the country, and which has grown into a very big network worth almost about 9,000 crores or so as their annual turnover in microcredit. So they are into taking up farming as a major activity, and most of those self-help groups are engaged in farming. And since Kudumbashri is being funded by the state government and also funded by their own sources, microcredit and loans from the bank, they have been able to provide financial support to the women collectives who are engaged in diesel farming. So women can go about and find out land suitable for farming, and since the landlords or the owners of the land do not want to cultivate due to various reasons, they can lease out this land for a particular amount of money. I think now the current rate is 10,000 rupees per acre per annum. And once that is through, these people can cultivate annual crops in those places. And they are eligible for all kinds of support from the Kudumbashri. They will get subsidies from the Kudumbashri, they will get production incentives, they will also get support for fertilizer and other operations, even post-harvesting operations as well. So that is one way of overcoming this issue, which issue of what should I say, providing assistance to these farming. That is one way of doing that. And second mechanism is, how do you make use of the local self-government institutions to intervene in finding out land which is lying fallow and make it available to the farmers to cultivate. So farmer collectives can come forward, approach the local governments, and local governments, by their political influence through some kind of a mediation, would convene the meeting of landowners, and those who are willing to do that would be able to give away their land for a particular amount of fee or annual rent based on which people can take a farm. So these are two, I would say, well-organized institutional mechanisms where this particular issue is being addressed. And from the policy perspective, the government of Kerala, acknowledging that this is going to be the only way of encouraging farming, otherwise you cannot encourage people to farm in their land, which is very limited. Government has started giving financial support to lease to farming. And they are eligible for subsidies, they are eligible except for insurance, or even in natural calamity, when there is a natural calamity due to climate excess, climate change excess, and then those farmers are eligible for due compensation by the government of Kerala. Once the agricultural officer visits that place and assess the damage, they are likely to get, or they are eligible to get some compensation.
Not the owners, the tenant farmers.
Tenant farmers. You get some compensation for the calamity as well. So I think this is how we have tried to formalize it, and now we are thinking of coming out with a state law to formalize lease to farming and to provide lease farmers with more rights and privileges, so that they will be having formal credit, formal assistance from the government, even insurance will also be provided. And another important thing which is likely to happen is, how do you extend this facility to perennial crops? So this is something which we have to think of. And there are certain instances where farmers have started leasing out perennial crops also, particularly coconut. They can lease land for almost about 6 years or so, because when you apply fertilizers to coconut, then the results would be visible only after 3 years. So a tenant farmer will have to have this holding in his ownership, or maybe for lease for 5 years. Otherwise, he will not be able to avail the interventions which we make, like in soil fertility management, etc. So that also is being done. I have seen a few farmers who are leasing out and getting land on lease from landlords who are not here, not in the country, who are interested in leasing out their land for farming, and they can take that farm and run it for maybe 5 years. And that is some new organizational mechanisms are evolving. And there is also one more. I think I will explain those things later in the second row.
Thank you for sharing some things that have worked really to recognize their rights and also to help them access land from Panchayat. However, any conversation on tenancy that ignores women cultivators, that remains incomplete.
That's me.
So, let us hear from Shivani because they are working in the field. She is from humanity, and women are increasingly becoming cultivators because under such climate change, men are mostly migrating, leaving women behind, and they are somehow managing cultivation, but without being known as farmers. So they are quite invisible tenants. So from your field experience, if you can talk about the specific interventions that your organization has taken to really help women access land and access other entities, that will be real.
Thank you, Manas. I think, thank you firstly for kind of talking about gender on this platform. I think to begin with, I think women do most of the labor around agriculture, as we know, and different estimates put it between 60 to 80%. In some cases, it's a formal labor, right, when they are a tenant, but in most cases, they are within family. And while they may be part of the family structure, they still end up acting like labor, right? Because they do all the grunt work, and when the decision making has to be made, the man of the family will come back. As you will see, if you're in Maharashtra, in May, everybody disappears, all the men, because they have to go make sure that the wheat cultivation or whatever cultivation has happened is sold. The whole philosophy that we are working on is whoever is working with land, and in this case for us it's women, whether it's agricultural structures or common structures or forest related structures, if they are doing the grunt work, if they are going to the fields, going to the forest, then they are the ones who should have access, control, tenure, security, ownership, whatever is the structure within which we are working. Specifically coming to leasing, because we haven't really talked, we don't like to use the word tenancy like you. So we have seen from a women perspective, I think 95% of women that we know lease are in informal arrangements. Right? They are arrangements, typically they lease from like somebody, typically from an upper caste, because we work a lot with the most marginalized, so people who have migrated to Sheher, Bajwala Sheher type of thing, and also where they have negotiated with the Gram Panchayat to give them the fallow land. कि वो 2 बीघा जमीन वहाँ पड़ी है तो एज अ कलेक्टिव हमने ले ली. Or what we have seen is a lot of the times the land that they initially lease is not the most productive, and they initially take a lease of 2 to 3 years in a very informal structure and typically at very exploitative conditions. So जो आपने बोला था वो एकदम सही है कि फ्रंट एंड पेमेंट तो खैर उन लोग ज़्यादातर लोग नहीं एग्री करते क्योंकि they can't afford it, but it's always much more much less risk sharing is what we have seen. And we work with like bunch of people around Nagpur area. वहाँ पे तो we know कि बहुत ही ज़्यादा agricultural distress है. So what happens in these cases? They will make the land productive in 2-3 years. धीरे-धीरे करके पहले कुछ थोड़ा बहुत करेंगे, फिर थोड़ा और करेंगे. तीसरे साल में जब वो अच्छी लैंड हो जाती है, तो पंचायत बोलती है अब हम अच्छे रेट पे दें. तो ये हमें बहुत सारी ये एनेक्टोटल है, बट देयर इज अ ट्रेंड, राइट? वी डोंट हैव डेटा, बट हमने ये देखा है. सो ये एक बहुत ही प्योर लीजिंग का अगर मैं आपको एग्जांपल दिया मैंने, बट अगर इफ यू गो डाउन टू द व्हाट इज द रूट कॉज इन आवर पर्सपेक्टिव, एंड वी जस्ट स्टार्टेड लुकिंग एट लीजिंग, बिकॉज हमारा फर्स्ट फेज में जो हमारा काम हुआ था वो ज़्यादातर ओनरशिप पे ज़्यादा फोकस था, ओनरशिप और टेन्योर सिक्योरिटी पे ज़्यादा फोकस था. सो हमने 2-3 मुद्दे आइडेंटिफाई किए हैं. वन इज देयर इज नो इंस्टीट्यूशन अराउंड दिस, राइट? देयर इज नो इंस्टीट्यूशन वेयर आई कैन गो एंड फाइंड आउट कि अच्छा लीजिंग क्या कर सकते हैं, किसको कर सकते हैं, प्रोसेस क्या है, टर्म्स क्या है, व्हाट इज माय राइट, व्हाट इज माय. Secondly, leasing also has to be kind of categorized into private leasing and leasing from government institutions like पंचायत या जो भी उसको कंट्रोल कर रहा है उस चीज़ को, क्योंकि उसके दोनों के जो one would imagine कि उनके processes, उनके norms वगैरह थोड़े different होंगे. Thirdly, of course, the processes are not. तो ये 3-4 चीज़ें हमें लगता है कि महिलाओं वैसे भी दिक्कत है, पर महिलाओं के लिए शायद एक एक्स्ट्रा डिग्री ऑफ दिक्कत हो जाती है. एंड आई थिंक एवरीबडी इज काइंड ऑफ टॉक्ड अबाउट द नॉन एक्सेसिबिलिटी ऑफ स्कीम्स, बट उसमें जैसे अभी हम अपने छत्तीसगढ़ में हम एक महिला बहुत सारी महिलाओं के साथ काम करें, उनको ये IFR का होता है, बट सिंपल थिंग्स कि वो वहाँ पे सालों से कल्टिवेट करें, उसकी पुश्ते कल्टिवेट whatever small piece of land, she was growing rice till we went, she was happy कि कुछ नहीं हो रहा है, कोई मुझे नहीं निकालने वाला, right? But when you tell them, and in the last 3 years she's been able to get पट्टा पड़ा जाए IFR. So अभी even if she has the same productivity, कुछ नहीं इंक्रीज हुआ, तो उसको 1600 रुपये क्विंटल की जगह 3100 रुपीज क्विंटल मिलेगा. Nothing changes, only because she can now actually is recognized as a farmer and she now gets MSP. And I'm not even talking about seed subsidy and fertilizer subsidy and loans, and it is a like no-brainer from that perspective. So I think there are lots of small things that we need to kind of think about. But yeah, I can go on, but I give it up.
Thank you for bringing the perspective. Alive. But have you noticed any difference between the state where they have done something for tenant farmers and the states where nothing has been done? Is there any difference for
Not
when to access and
not in my, our experience is also very limited, right? It's not कि हम 10,000 गाँव में काम कर रहे हैं, हम 1000 गाँव में काम कर रहे हैं. उसमें focus in the initial things was more on ownership. So I think I'm probably not in the right place to answer that question, क्योंकि हमने अपने डेटा को उस लेंस से नहीं देखा है. That's
okay. So now we have with us Dr. Vinod Agarwal, who is okay, Mr. Vinod is okay. So he is from the administrative service and he has served Telangana government for many years, and he is an insider with us. And we all know Andhra and Telangana also have done significant work to recognize the rights of non-farmers, but I don't know, for some reason the cards which were issued to them and with which they were able to access their entitlements were withdrawn, and there was a demand this year before Kharif to get it. I don't think they got it, but government has done something. I think let us listen the whole story from him, and with that, whatever is the experience, what lessons are there for other states to learn from under the Telangana state.
Thank you. I was about to lose heart that my chance may not come. Deepika has talked about the problem of tenants, what is the tenancy situation and why, what is the situation that they are not able to get facilities, etc. Our friend Jiju has talked, everybody has talked. But why this is happening, we need to analyze. Why these tenancies are not being recorded, we have to look at it. I was part of the team which formulated the Niti Aayog model law. I took it was circulated to the states to put to managing as part of the team who formulated. So basically, once we have diagnosis of the disease, you can't prescribe a treatment. So why this is the issue is that if you have to go back into history, you see that tenancy is a word which has got different meaning in different states, in different contexts. Landholders are called tenants in Bihar and Bengal and everywhere. But anyway, we are discussing here, the tenant is a person who doesn't own the land, but he takes the land from the owner or the patera and cultivates it on some return given to the owner. This is a tenancy for our discussion purposes. We are talking about tenant, not the tenant, the Revenue Tenancy Act, VR Tenancy Act. So what happened is, when we started with the land reforms, there are two important aspects of land reforms. One was the Zamindari abolition, and second was the protection of the tenancy. There were large tracts of land owned by big landlords, and they were giving it on tenancy or lease to various people to cultivate the land. And again, the same problems, the tenants were not able to access the credit, they were not having the security of tenure, they could be evicted at will of the landowner. So to obviate all these issues, governments came up with the acts called like Protection of Tenancy Act. All of you must have heard of the Operation Barga of the Bengal. Similar operations were done in other states also, but before Bengal is done. Hyderabad had a tenancy, Hyderabad state, which is now three parts divided into Telangana, part of Maharashtra, part of Karnataka. Hyderabad state, way back in 1951, they got a Protection of Tenancy Act. They did a detailed survey, door-to-door survey of all the agriculture holdings, a census of the holding. And there's a who's cultivating the land, they decided, and put in a register. And they made a law that whoever is a tenant, he is protected. His tenant is protected, he cannot be evicted. And his tenancy is inheritable. So what happened is the landlord now, his right is restricted. Till now, the landowner's right was absolute. He could sell, he could evict, he could record the position, tomorrow he could do it. Now it is not restricted. One step ahead, they amended the tenancy law somewhere in 1954 or 55 and brought in a new section there, the 34E, where they went ahead and say that protected tenant can be made a full owner on payment of 10 times of the annual revenue. 8 times he will go to the owner and 2 times he will go to the government. So this was a big blow for the landowners. Now this kind of laws were made in almost every state to protect the rights and to protect the welfare of the tenants. Fine, that's good. Nobody can dispute on the intention of this and this. But the impact was what? This has created a feeling of insecurity in the minds of the landowners. Now everywhere in the country, every state, there is a feeling among the landowners that once somebody is recorded as tenant or lessee of the land, tomorrow there may be a law or he may lose. First of all, recovering a position itself is difficult. We all know what kind of a legal system we have got in our country. So in this judicial system or legal system, it's almost impossible to recover the position quickly, and then tomorrow everybody has a fear that there could be, if the tenant is recorded, it comes on record, then the owner might lose rights someday. That is the root cause of the issue. How much tenant is available? If you go by records, there are no tenants. At least Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, I can say with a certain amount of confidence that there are no tenants on the record at all. Because nobody records the tenancy. Everywhere there is self-cultivation. There is a column of tenants called tenant, cultivators column, self-cultivation. He may not be staying here, he may be staying 1,000 miles away, somewhere else, but he is self-cultivating. That's the record. So, West Bengal or Bengal could do the operation Bangada because there are no records. There are no records of tenancy. The owner's name was not recorded, so they did a census operation. In 51 in Telangana, Hyderabad state also, whatever they could do the Protection of Tenancy Act, they could do because there were no records earlier. A census was taken up. But now we have a record where the owner himself is shown as tenant. So this problem, keeping in mind, the Niti Aayog, the model law which was suggested to all the states, we said that the law should be one side, we have got this fear in the minds of the owners, which will not allow the tenant to come on record. On the second side, because the tenancy doesn't exist, and tenants are no more the weaker person, And the owners are the stronger person or the very large landlord. There are no large landlords now in the country. Very few must be there here and there, hidden. Because subsequently we had this Agricultural Land Ceiling Act in every state. So now maximum 30, 40, 50 acres, more than that, there will not be many, except keeping aside the politically strong substance, there will not be. So the tenants and today, that sort of situation doesn't exist, which existed in early 50s and 40s and 60s. Now, keeping this thing in mind, that the tenant or the cultivator of the land should also get facilities to the access to the credit, access to facilities like subsidies, etc. Similarly, the fear in the minds of the landlord should go. So the NITI Aayog suggested the model now by saying that right of both the things are protected. So the leasing of the farm should be such design that landowner should have an assurance that his right of ownership will not go anywhere. It will remain. It will be protected. Similarly, the cultivator should, his tenure also should be protected. So that's what is the law suggested. Unfortunately, the spirit of this law has not been understood by many of the states, or maybe they did not have enough confidence in the effectiveness of this law, or they did not understand the necessity of the law. And most of the states have not done anything to follow this law. In Andhra Pradesh, they did a half-hearted method they adopted. They said that cultivators will not be brought as cultivators as tenant or cultivators on the record, on the revenue record. They said they will issue a certificate of cultivation. And the certificate of cultivation will entitle them for input credits. Only that much, nothing more than that. There is no security of tenure, there is no long-term thing, there is no protection for the landowners to recover the possession after the tenancy over. All these things are not there. The law, which model law of the NITI Aayog suggested, that whenever the lease term ends, there is assured recovery of possession to the landowner. Suppose the lease is given for 3 years period or 4 years period. After the end of the period, the land should automatically revert back to the landowner. And if it doesn't happen, the government machinery, the tehsildar is made competent to recover it. This sort of provisions are not in place. So this had its own pitfalls, and subsequently there were a lot of uproar. It was withdrawn. Politically, it became a political issue in Andhra area. Telangana area never attended this. So these are. So I am again telling that
did not issue such cards.
those such cards were not issued.
When was that?
Sorry?
The certificate, when was that?
I think it was 15, 16. So necessity, again we have to go back what I am trying to say is, the government should recognize that it is compulsory, it is necessary to protect the right of the landowners as well. Today landowners are known to big landowners, there are a lot of reverse tendencies. My driver has 1 acre of land in his village, he cannot cultivate. So he leases it out to his neighbor. The neighbor has his own 2 acres plus this 1 acre, 3 acres. He is a small farmer. So 2 plus 1, 3 acres together he cultivates and gives something to him. There are various types of tenancies. Fixed rent tenancies, sharecropping also different types. Somewhere the input cost is borne by the owner, sometimes input cost also is shared, and cropping also is shared in different proportions. There are different types of it. But the most important thing again, I am repeating, is protection of the rights of the landowner is important. Unless that is done, tenancies cannot come on record. And unless they come on record, tenancies or leasing, whatever you call it, cannot come on record. Unless they come on record, all the measures to provide the facilities, etc., will be half-hearted. It cannot become.
Now we will like to take some questions from the audience.
Yes. Couple of questions. One is and I just want to bring a little bit of market focus here. In the market right now, given the mode of crop holidays, there is a lot of absentee laws that are also emerging. We see a lot of managed farming kind of models that are coming up. Where in Karnataka you see the Hosaji Guru, and even in Telangana and Andhra, there are a lot of companies that are sort of taking lands on behalf of managed farming and continuing business. Currently, they are all operating in a sort of grey area that is, neither in the recently SEBI also, impounded the assets of one company that was trying to do an investment based on that. So how does when we talk about land pooling or we talk about managed farming business, right now these are also happening informally. But in the formal structure, do you see any sense of legal structures that could enable some of these to happen? That is question number one. Question number two is in the land stack we saw recently Maharashtra showed the Bhoo Aadhaar ID for land there. So how do you see land stack and how are those data points and how are they sort of would evolve in terms of aiding the land leasing there? If any of you could have some insights on that, will also be good.
The border land leasing law which the NITI Aayog has circulated to the various states provides for companies also to be tenants or lessors. Lessees. So this managed farming, the large farming where the small farmers, the large chunks are variously taken, the companies can be a tenant or LSE. So that state legal framework is applicable to them also as well. So that enables that one. Coming back to your second question of the Bhoo Aadhaar, I don't understand the question properly. Exactly what do you want to know?
No, so there is currently in Maharashtra, there is a 12-digit ID that is being generated, where lands, even in today also there is another condition where the lands are sort of getting digitized. Even the Dharani system, last year they were stopped in Telangana also.
Lot gets a unique ID.
Yeah, unique ID.
Get a Aadhaar. Yeah.
So would you see any progress on that front, given the complexity of what we are dealing into to address some of these issues?
My friend Deepak Saran is here. He will agree with me, I am sure, that all these are only gimmicks. It's only optics.
I also agree with you.
Huh?
I also agree with you.
Thank you. These are all optics. Already every land parcel has a unique ID. You say so and so taluka, so and so village, so and so survey number. These exist only in one place. It doesn't exist in several places. If you say survey number 426, only one survey number 426 is there. It is a unique ID already. What we are doing is we are replacing taluka, we are giving a number. If we are replacing district, we are giving a number to district.
Even those have numbers in the census.
Yes. Even those numbers have the census.
Still have a digital number.
If you take every village has got a unique census number. If you combine the census number and survey number, this is unique ID. This will be 7 digits or 6 digits. Other than that, we are making it 12 digits. Calling Bhudhar and all those sort of surveillance. You Ulpin or what something we call a dot something in today. We are calling Bhudhar, we are calling Ulpin, and all these things are only optics. Things that we are trying to do something. It doesn't mean anything to anybody. It doesn't benefit anybody. Anyway, anybody is not benefiting from this.
Whatever it benefits the landowners.
It benefits the digital company who does it all.
Exactly. It benefits vendors.
It benefits the vendors. Nobody gets benefited. See, you have got a land in a village. You call it a survey number, which is easy to understand, 3 digit or 4 digits at the most. Or you get a 12 digit number, which is difficult to understand, which is difficult to remember. One is the same thing for you. Unique ID, unique ID.
Any other question or any idea also on this issue?
I would like to ask because about the Andhra side. As you are saying that, I think for years together this system was continuing. The tenants were cultivating without any record and land owners. But because of the Riyatu scheme or something, government started giving some money to the farmers. So now you have created a demand for recognition of tenancy. So, whether it is a real problem of farmers or because we started some scheme and the problem has been created, now we want a legal solution which we cannot provide because anything you do, either it will affect adversely landowners or it will affect adversely tenants. So I don't know whether these kind of schemes are to be blamed or it is a real problem of farmers.
But real problem, if you ask, then it is a real problem because at least in Andhra, when that study had revealed that out of the farmers who had committed suicide, 75% were tenant farmers.
Okay. Because they
were taking loans from informal sources. So the problem is real, but what can be the solution?
That is the owner, giving ownership, which happened in 70s. Then take a drastic decision and give all the tenants ownership. Because banks will give credit.
That you already given a
Listen, it's very simple. bank will take credit only on collateral. Collateral can be given only when you are owner, because it should be transferable. So there is no solution to it. This is problem.
So I think, from a very small sample of people that I have worked with and women that I have worked with, this is a real problem. And the problem really is not so much, at least जिसके साथ हमने काम किया है, जो कि absolutely marginalized landless families से आते हैं, उनका problem longevity of lease का भी problem है, informality of lease का भी problem है, उनका exploitative terms का भी problem है. तो it is, I think, हाँ वो tenant उस पे कब्जा कर लेगा, वो एक problem है. And maybe जो आपने बोला था ना कि because उन्होंने कहा कि 8 times pay करके तुम्हें ownership कर, so maybe we need to see how right to use and right to own can coexist without creating so much of friction and protect both of them. Because a lot of the times, because they are not able to access the basic schemes of the government and the basic prices like I mentioned, उनका जो farming है वो unviable हो जाता है at some point in time. And it not only affects the food security of all of us, it first affects their own family's food security. Because smallholders normally पहले खुद को खिलाते हैं, फिर बाकी बचता है वो बाहर. तो ये एक शायद if we kind of distinguish this right to use and right to own and see how they can happily coexist, maybe that's the framework we could.
I have a point to add. Basically, this distills down to issues of lack of proper institutions at the grassroots to deal with this complex issue of distributing land, registration of the land parcel for cultivation, and making them available for various purposes, etc. So even though limitedly we have tried out something, we have every Grama Panchayat has got an agricultural office manned by 3 professionals, I would say, and they keep all the records of the farmers in that office. And this leased land farming itself is somewhere or the other formalized through this process. So if you want to have a leased land made available to a farmer or a group of farmer or a group industry, they can approach that particular office, and that officer will take care of the other formalities. So some mediation would be done by that office, which is a very reliable source for the entire farming community, because that's a government office and officer is dealing with that. So maybe the duration will be for 11 months. We are trying to think in trying to extend this duration of lease, maybe up to 3 years or 5 years or so. Again, legally, in such a way that an officer in charge, a government official will be in charge of that. So we can think of maybe a registry which can be digitized. We can think of transactions which can be digitized, and also maybe automatically once that particular term or the increment term is over, then the land ownership goes back to the concerned landowner, and the other person will have to go around and find out whether another piece of land is available for him to cultivate. There is not going to be a permanent solution. In a way, ownership will have to be retained with the farmer. But we have to have much more sophisticated and modern mechanisms by which this transaction of land for cultivation purposes is possible at the grassroots. So that is something which we have to think of. And I don't know whether that is going to happen in other parts of the state, unless there are very strong institutions at the grassroots. It would not be possible.
Yeah. Yes. Live question. No, I don't have a question actually. I just wanted to share something. First thing is, I agree what Shivani said, that we believe in the theory of change, that I can say over the last few years working with the rural people, and particularly the marginalized section. That if you want the advancement in the resilient livelihoods and also want to restore the ecology of the environment as it is also recovered at level, then 3 things are very essential to that. And that we say the tenure and the institution and the appropriate finance for restoration. And in this case, when we see, particularly when this subject, because we are in one side what Manas said, the title about the tenancy, and other side is the sustainable agriculture, we are saying. So if you really want the sustainable agriculture, what we are saying, then all these 3 things are very critical for that. Whether the tenure and the institutional mechanism and the finance for the restoration. These 3 things are equally important and highly. So all these things together can result in the sustainability. When one of them is lacking, then it cannot be sustainable, and that is what is happening to the whole agriculture now.
Yes.
Either tenancy is affected. When you are trying to cure the tenancy, then there is no institution. If you want to build the institution, there is no finance available. Because the people who are there in the farm, like we discussed already, like the women or the people who are in informal sector, doesn't have financial system to support them too. So all three are needs to be equally seen and make a mechanism where all three will be addressed. And for that, as we discussed in 2017, if I remember, in the same ILDC, in one of the sessions we discussed, Panchayat can be a better institution for that, but there is a problem. When we talk 29 subjects on Gram Panchayat, which Constitution has allocated, that Schedule 11, in that Schedule 11, land is not a subject. That's a critical one. Though we talk that panchayats for social justice and economic development of the people, that is the prime line with the constitution talks about panchayat. But the social justice and economic development, the main basic resource on which it can be based is the land, which is excluded from the 29 subjects of the
There is an
panchayat.
exception to that, na? Homestead land, a panchayat दे सकता है.
नहीं,
घर का-
नहीं,
वो जो
nothing, absolutely nothing.
See, we have made the panchayats kind of so I think some dysfunctional.
Yeah.
So that's the problem. If the panchayats are working, it will be there. Kind of, you know, the article also.
So that is the place, I think, if we can bring out certain things where we can make a very powerful system like as he has example. If a institution at the local level where people can, both the owner and the tenant can sit and negotiate, and somebody can on behalf both of them, which was the traditional system already earlier. We never try to formalize that. What we want, like it happened to everything, not only in the farming. Village pond, which was the community was renovating everywhere, cleaning it, maintaining it since ages. The moment government said it is a government property, and the next day said we have schemes to renovate it, we have NRE and everything. The next day we started seeing that most of the ponds are going with full of that weeds and everything, and nobody is cleaning. If you ask why, then it's a government pond, sir. Government is the responsible to do it. It's not our responsibility. So who is that government, who will come and how it will be done? That change which is happening in the rural society now, not only rural society, entire society. So nobody is there accountable for that, no institutional mechanism, everything government. But government doesn't have those norms to manage it. So there we need how collectives, community level collectives or panchayat can be made accountable and takes the responsibility locally and as a local government, local institution to face both the sides, whether it is tenants or it is the owner. Both can be addressed there and it can be better managed completely. And now that statistic, the whole thing is that it is not that food system is affected. The area under cultivable fallows is increasing every year. Now people who is there for informally also leasing, now stopped leasing because they fear any time my land can go to somebody else.
That means access to land by landless also is reducing.
That's the thing. So that is, it is not only marginal, that leads to migration. There are many sequencing activities. But the question is that fear of losing in both sides is increasing. That fear in the rural society is increasing. That can be addressed only by local government, not by bigger ones. That might be it. Thank you.
मेरा एक क्वेश्चन बस
Yes.
सर एक बार हमको
एक्चुअली उड़ीसा में एक इशू जो है जो हम लोगों का यहाँ तहसील उसको डील नहीं कर पा रहे हैं अभी, जैसे कि कुछ लीज सेटलमेंट हुआ है तो वहाँ पे जिसको मिला है जमीन उसका प्रॉपर डिमार्केशन नहीं हुआ है. लाइक मुझे अगर जमीन मिला है, मुझे पता भी नहीं है कि मुझे वहाँ पे जमीन मिला है और मनोज वहाँ पे IFR में मतलब उस खेती को इंक्लूड किया है. और मैं नहीं IFR वो लीज है, सेटल ऑलरेडी है, लेकिन मुझे पता नहीं कि वो मेरे नाम पे है. मैं किसी और जगह में खेती कर रही हूँ.
गवर्नमेंट जो देता है लैंडलेस को
वो बहुत पहले मिल चुका है, लेकिन उसका स्केच मैप रेवेन्यू मैप में नहीं है. वो सिर्फ हाथ का नक्शा जो बोलते हैं वो नजरी नक्शा में है, वो भी तहसील के पास, तो लोगों को पता नहीं है. तो मुझे जहाँ पे मिला है मैं वहाँ पे नहीं हूँ, मैं किसी और जगह हूँ, लेकिन जो जगह मिला है वो किसी और के रिपोर्ट में है जो उसको IFR में क्लेम कर रहे हैं। तो इसलिए वो सारे डिस्प्यूटेड लैंड हो गया है। मैं ना मेरे पास वो जमीन है ना उसके पास भी मतलब क्लेम नहीं कर पा रहा। तो इसको कैसे मतलब वो नॉलिफाई हो सकता है क्या, वो जो लीज में मिला है, या कुछ सॉल्यूशन उसका है क्या?
ये तो प्रॉब्लम कई जगह है, बहुत जगह है, हजारों ने लाखों में है ये प्रॉब्लम। आपने बताया उसमें क्या है कि आपके पास जमीन है, कागज नहीं है।
हाँ,
जहाँ पे कागज है, जहाँ पे आपके पास कागज है, जमीन नहीं है, वहाँ उसके पास जमीन है, उसके पास कागज नहीं है। सिंपल, जो कागज और जमीन को एक मिलाना पड़ेगा।
नहीं एक्चुअली
जहाँ कागज है वहाँ तो जमीन नहीं ले आ सकते, तो जहाँ जमीन है उसके लिए कागज
वो नहीं हो पा रहा ना। एक्चुअली मेरे को जो जमीन मिला है
तहसीलदार के आपके लेवल पे होगा
नहीं, वो नहीं कर पाया। एक्चुअली मेरे को जमीन मिला है लेकिन मैं कहीं और खेती कर रही
वही तो
हूँ,
ना।
और ये वो वहाँ पे 15 साल से वहीं पे कर रहा है।
हाँ तो ठीक है, जहाँ
तो वो IFR में उसको
सेटल करवाना पड़ेगा।
वही बात है। इशू ये है, बहुत सारे हैं कैसे,
बहुत सारे हैं।
जहाँ आपके पास जमीन है वहाँ का कागज आपके पास नहीं है, जहाँ के आपके पास कागज है वहाँ का कब्जा उनके पास है।
इसको नॉलिफाई जैसे
आपको सिविल केस फाइल करना पड़ेगा। आप सूट फॉर टाइटल फाइल करिए, सिविल कोर्ट डिसीजन देगा आपको कि आप 12-15 साल से वहाँ पर है, आपको जमीन इतनी क्वांटिटी तो सही थी आपके पास, लेकिन आपको गलत डिमार्केशन दी गई, और वो अगर इफ यू कैन गेट ए टाइटल डिक्री फ्रॉम द कोर्ट, देन ओनली रेवेन्यू डिपार्टमेंट विल डू समथिंग, अदरवाइज
नहीं, यहाँ तो सिविल भी नहीं कर सकते क्योंकि ये फॉरेस्ट लैंड की बात हो रही है।
नहीं फॉरेस्ट ने पुलिस में मिल चुका है।
So the case for iron is up now. So just
No, only just some broad layman in this language.
okay.
कोई और उसको IFR के लिए क्लेम कर रहे हैं।
Last question, sir. 20 साल पहले जब लाइवलीहुड ये सब इश्यूज हो रहा था, नरेगा was introduced. Nobody was able to think then there would be an act and there would be an institution, panchayat and below can really manage it. And today it's one of the biggest. You have other end facts which is also almost recognized in catchment. Those institutional structure, can they play some role in solving? Because the issue, I think, more than Narega, this is a bigger issue. This has a huge bearing on a significant number. So I'm just throwing is some institution below PR, panchayat systems, or like PACs or any other institution is closer to solving this issue.
देखिए इस पे टैक्स का रोल बिल्कुल है। Tax is not a regulatory body. Tax is like a bank, financial institution. You can make a law that you have to give loan to the parents also. Tax will give. How will you recover? If the default, what is the security? What is the recovery? Like you said that we have not the other political. So it will not work. Yes. Secondly, coming to the local level, what is the other level? Other level it is panchayat. Panchayats unfortunately have lost their credibility. Today, we all know how panchayat elections are fought, how much money is spent. Panchayats are not the community or collectives. They are not the collectives. In many cases,
But they have a fundamental constitutional
a constitutional obligation hai. They are supposed to be the representative of the community, but the real fact on the ground is that they are a monopoly of somebody who is very powerful or very rich.
That is not the case everywhere.
It's not the case everywhere, I understand.
Yeah,
But it's the case in the many of the cases. In Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Karnataka, at whatever panchayat, Gram Panchayat elections,
Agreed. But
people spend lakhs, crores of rupees.
That is
if it is crores is a multi-crores when we call an assembly election or a parliament election, they are also investing and they also play the power. And but the thing is here that there is a law, there is a enforcement,
So therefore,
there is a executive. But in case of panchayat, we lack the executive part of it.
Sir, that's
That
it.
needs a support for
I'm
that.
saying, therefore I'm saying that when this central area, the why this land is subject is initially it was proposed that land also should be handed over to panchayat. Like they said 29 law. But subsequently people did not agree because they thought that it will be more counterproductive than the productive.
Yeah, I mean,
There is a problem of perspective in the whole argument.
Actually, devolution
There's a
of
problem
power
of
was not
perspective
related,
in the
that's
whole
why it was not
argument.
done.
Actually,
Devolution has to be done meaningfully.
If this committee has to suggest a institutional mechanism, then what is the other options? There is no other option otherwise. based on
A
certain.
centralized governing mechanism is not going to solve these issues at all.
Yeah, we have to conclude always.
Thank you very much, audience, for participating in this.
And thank you panelists also.
Thank you so much.
You will let me know. So, but I would like to say to sum up that empowering tenants is not a marginal reform, as you understand. A lot of complicated issues are there. Putting it under the carpet also will not improve the situation. If we really want to improve prosperity, resilience and equity, this is an issue to be addressed. So let us explore. We all are practitioners, academicians and administrators. So let us explore how this can be addressed. Otherwise, the way it is going on, people who are taking the risk are not gaining the things, and it is not sustainable. And as Nirmal said, this is also true, that the tenant farmers are not investing in the land because they do not know whether they will have it next year or not. And owners are also not. So land husbandry also is suffering. So ultimately we are losing out.
Food security will become a bigger issue in
Yes.
India because already exists,
So-
but that will become more catastrophic.
True. Thank you.
Thank you, Manas. Thank you for getting us all here.
अच्छा हमारे कम लोग हैं ज़्यादा उससे तो और मिला जाता।
झगड़ा हो रहा था। इधर आइए।
अच्छा आगे।
आइए। हाँ नहीं तो फिर लैपटॉप आएगा। Can somebody take some line or three? Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. We should connect. मेरा email लिख। I will create an assignment. Problem है। तुम मेरे को बताओ। I will give this one.
रिटायर्ड लोगों को क्षेत्र में जाकर कुछ
But I recently in Kerala Kerala is importing coffee But this shift of how you are talking, we couldn't get to speak. The whole shift of how ultimately was
See you. I'll send you a picture.
That's only can do not have trust on
They will immediately get fears about again going there.
No, nothing will happen. This is the same kind of figure the British had when they transferred power to India. Every government body has got its own wisdom, everyone has got its own capability. People, you should trust people. Even a tribal hamlet will be having its own wisdom and ingenuity to run a government of their own. So that is what you have to do. You have to give them officers, you have to give them money, you have to give maybe optional other things to get sometimes you go to the masters as well. In a way it is better that way, rather than everything being overwhelmed by people and a few people in the center. They will go to the other places also. You get only factors.
No, I would love to read
So explain the before 7-0. 1-0. 9-3. do one thing, send me WhatsApp, give your name and other details.
Sure, I'll just show you. Divina, I have not forget your name. It's a very unique name.
I just texted him.
No, because right now for me, how, I mean, I was at PDT last week and meeting a lot of cardamom farmers there. There, it's very evident that, you know, there are lesser number of, only the older ones of 70s are gripping that no youngsters are coming in, no people are relocating. Yeah, that's the very, you know, how did that end up in this kind of a problem is still,
That
is it too labor, is it too, because the labor is too high, cost is high.
Basically, these people do not look at the kind of promotion and support which should have been given by the government to agriculture, which did not happen. That is nothing but a fallout of globalization. Globalization has taken away the vantage point of agriculture to a great extent. And also industrialization can naturally any community for that matter which undergoes this kind of a transformation will have to have marginalized agriculture. But the only thing is when you have this transformation, you should have concomitant policy measures to see to it that whoever is sticking on to agriculture are safeguarded. So then you have to pump more money, more subsidy. Otherwise, it is not, you just cannot leave agriculture.